The Great Chamber of the Galactic Council was the largest room ever built by any species. Its walls stretched up into darkness, covered with the flags of 400 different civilizations. Floating platforms held representatives from every corner of the galaxy. Some had scales, some had fur, some had shells, and some had bodies made of pure light. All of them had gathered for one purpose: to judge humanity. Admiral Park stood at the human podium, her uniform perfectly pressed, her face showing nothing. She was 63 years old and had served in the human fleet for 40 years. She had seen battles, peace treaties, and everything in between, but she had never seen anything like this. High Arbiter floated at the center of the chamber, her long silver robes trailing behind her like smoke. She was a species known for their cold logic and colder hearts. In her thin fingers, she held a document that would change everything. "The Galactic Council has reached its decision," announced. Her voice echoed through the chamber, translated instantly into 1,000 languages. "After 300 years of membership, the human species is hereby expelled from the Galactic Union." A wave of whispers spread through the chamber. Some representatives looked pleased, others looked nervous, a few looked shocked. Ambassador stood beside Admiral Park, his hands clasped behind his back. He was a small man with gray hair and kind eyes, but those eyes had turned hard as stone. He had spent his entire life building bridges between humanity and the other species. Now he watched those bridges burn. "The charges against humanity are as follows," continued. "Unauthorized colonization of 17 star systems, refusal to limit population growth as required by Union law, development of weapon classes forbidden by the Treaty of 10,000 Stars, and finally, aggressive cultural contamination of protected species." Doctor, the oldest member of the human delegation, let out a small sigh. She was 87 and had been humanity's chief diplomat for 40 years. She remembered when humans first joined the Union, full of hope and wonder. The other species had seemed so advanced, so wise. It had taken decades to learn the truth. The Union was not a family. It was a cage, designed to keep younger species weak and dependent. Fleet Commander of the Hegemony leaned forward on his platform, his 6 eyes gleaming with satisfaction. His people had always hated humans. They were a warrior species, proud and cruel, and they had never forgiven humanity for defeating them in the border war of 2847. He had pushed hardest for this expulsion. "The human species is given 30 standard years to vacate all holdings within Union space," declared. "All human colonies, stations, and vessels must be removed. Any humans remaining after this period will be considered illegal aliens and dealt with accordingly." 30 years. Admiral Park did the math in her head. Humanity had 200 billion people spread across 93 worlds. Moving them all in 30 years was not just difficult, it was supposed to be impossible. The Council knew this. They expected humanity to fail, to beg, to fight. They expected wrong. Counselor of the clicked her mandibles nervously. Her species had always been friendly to humans. They had traded with them, learned from them, even adopted some of their customs. But when the vote came, she had sided with the majority. Fear was a powerful thing. "The Council awaits the human response," said, looking down at Admiral Park with barely hidden contempt. The chamber fell silent. Every eye, every sensor, every attention focused on the small human woman at the podium. Admiral Park stepped forward. She looked up at the assembled representatives, 400 species who had just condemned her people to death or exile. She thought about all the things she could say. She could remind them of the medicines humanity had shared, the technologies they had given freely, the countless times human ships had rushed to help species in need. She could point out that the so-called forbidden weapons were defensive systems, designed to protect human colonies from pirates and raiders that the Union refused to deal with. But she said none of these things. Instead, she simply bowed. It was a deep bow, formal and precise, the kind humans gave to show respect. "The human race accepts the Council's judgment," she said. Her voice was calm and clear. "We will comply." The chamber erupted in confused noise. This was not the response anyone expected. Where were the tears? Where were the threats? Where was the desperate bargaining that lesser species always attempted when cornered? Ambassador stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "We request only one thing," he said. "We ask that our departure be observed by Council representatives. This way, no one can claim that we violated the terms of our exile." High Arbiter blinked her large silver eyes. This was unusual. Species being expelled usually tried to hide their movements, to sneak people and resources out before the deadline. Humanity was asking to be watched. "This request is acceptable," she said slowly. "Thank you," Ambassador replied. He bowed as Admiral Park had done, then turned and walked toward the exit. The rest of the human delegation followed in silence. Doctor paused at the door and looked back at the chamber. She had spent 40 years among these species, learning their languages, understanding their cultures, trying to build peace. Now it was over, but as she looked at their faces, she did not feel anger. She felt something closer to pity. They had no idea what they had done. Fleet Commander laughed as the humans left. "Look at them run," he said to his aide. "They know they are beaten. In 30 years, humanity will be nothing but a memory." Counselor did not laugh. Something about the way the humans had acted bothered her. They had been too calm, too accepting. It was like watching someone agree to jump off a cliff, knowing they had a parachute hidden under their clothes. High Arbiter returned to her quarters that night, troubled by thoughts she could not name. She had expected satisfaction. She had expected relief. Instead, she felt a strange, cold fear growing in her chest. She told herself it was nothing. Humanity was a young species, barely 3 centuries old in galactic terms. They had no great fleet, no ancient wisdom, no powerful allies. They were being sent into the darkness beyond the galaxy's edge, to cold and empty space where nothing lived. They would not survive. They could not survive. She was certain of this. But sleep did not come easily that night, and when it did, her dreams were filled with silence. The first ships left Earth on a cold morning in March. They were not warships or luxury cruisers. They were cargo haulers, massive and ugly, built to carry millions of tons across the stars. Their hulls were painted with the words "Human Evacuation Fleet" in simple white letters. Fleet Admiral O watched from the bridge of his command ship as the first wave departed. He was a tall man with a scar across his chin, earned in a battle he rarely spoke about. For 30 years, he had protected humanity's borders. Now his job was to erase them. "All ships report ready, Admiral," his aide said quietly. "Begin the withdrawal," O replied. His voice did not shake, but his heart felt heavy as stone. Across 93 worlds, the same scene repeated. Families packed their belongings into containers. Children said goodbye to pets they could not bring. Old people took one last look at homes their grandparents had built. Then they boarded the ships and flew away into the dark. The Council had sent observers to watch, as humanity had requested. These observers expected chaos. They expected crying, fighting, people refusing to leave. Instead, they found something that disturbed them far more: perfect order. On the colony world of Vega Prime, Colonel supervised the final harvest. 12 million humans had lived there for 100 years, turning a barren rock into a green paradise. Now they were leaving, and they were taking everything with them. "Strip the soil treatment from sectors 7 through 12, ordered. "Pack the pollinator drones. Drain the irrigation system." A young hegemony observer watched with growing unease. "You are removing the farming equipment?" he asked. "We are removing everything we brought," replied calmly. "The Council made clear that human presence is not wanted. We will not leave pieces of ourselves behind." "But the ecosystem you created, The plants, the water systems, they will die without maintenance. Looked at him with eyes that showed nothing. Yes, they will. When the last human ship left Vega Prime, the observers found a world returned to dust. The forests were gone, cut down and processed into building materials. The rivers were dry channels. The cities were empty shells, stripped of every wire, every pipe, every piece of glass. It was as if humanity had never been there at all. The same thing happened everywhere. Human engineers dismantled space stations bolt by bolt. Human doctors closed their clinics and took their medicines with them. Human teachers emptied their schools and deleted their databases. Nothing was left behind. Nothing was shared. Dr. Shin had been the galaxy's greatest expert in quantum biological medicine. Her techniques had saved millions of lives across a dozen species. She ran a clinic on the treating diseases that no one else could cure. One morning, her patients arrived to find the doors locked and a simple note posted outside. "We wish you well." Inside, every piece of equipment was gone. Every file was deleted. Every sample was destroyed. 3,000 patients were left without treatment, without explanation, without hope. Counselor A received the report with trembling hands. "She just left?" she asked. "No warning, no transfer of knowledge." "Nothing," her aide confirmed. "Dr. Shin boarded a human transport 3 days ago. She refused all communication requests." This was happening everywhere. Human scientists stopped publishing research. Human artists removed their work from galleries. Human musicians deleted their songs from public databases. It was as if an entire civilization was erasing itself from existence. The shipping consortium had been the largest transport company in the galaxy. Their 10,000 ships carried 40% of all trade between sectors. When the exile order came, the company recalled every single vessel. Chief Executive gave no interviews, made no statements. She simply sent one message to all her clients. "All contracts are hereby terminated. We thank you for your business." Then she vanished, along with her entire fleet. Within 1 month, prices for basic goods tripled. Within 3 months, several species faced food shortages. Within a year, the galactic economy was in free fall. High Arbiter called an emergency session of the Council. "This is economic warfare," she declared. "Humanity is deliberately sabotaging our trade networks." Fleet Commander slammed his fist against his podium. "We should have destroyed them when we had the chance. Now they mock us with their silent retreat." But Ambassador's words echoed in some minds. "We request only that our departure be observed." They had asked to be watched. They wanted the galaxy to see exactly what it was losing. And now, year by year, the galaxy was beginning to understand. On the border of human space, a patrol ship encountered a human freighter making its final journey out of Union territory. The captain, curious and perhaps a little sad, opened a communication channel. "Human vessel, this is Patrol 7. Do you require any assistance?" There was a long pause. Then a human voice, female and tired, replied, "Negative, Patrol, we require nothing from you. We require nothing from anyone. Safe travels." The channel closed. The human ship jumped to faster-than-light speed and disappeared into the void. The captain sat in her chair for a long time after that, staring at the empty space where the ship had been. She thought about all the human traders she had known, the human engineers who had helped repair her ship once, the human doctor who had saved her daughter's life. "What have we done?" she whispered to herself. No one answered. The stars burned cold and silent, and somewhere in the darkness, humanity continued its long march into exile, taking with them everything they had ever given to a galaxy that had rejected them. 15 years had passed since the exile order. The galaxy was falling apart. Intelligence Director I.M. sat in her dark office aboard the hidden station Resolve, watching screens filled with intercepted messages. The station floated in deep space, far from any star, invisible to every scanner in the galaxy. From here, she had watched the slow collapse of everything humanity had helped build. A message from the syndicate played on her main screen. The speaker was a finance minister, his silver face twisted with fear. Our entire banking system is failing. The algorithms were designed by humans 200 years ago. No one alive understands how they work. We have tried everything, but the errors are spreading faster than we can fix them. I smiled, but there was no joy in it. She pressed a button and the next message played. This one was from the Hegemony Military Command. Fleet Commander himself, looking older and weaker than she remembered. 60% of our warships are non-functional. The power cores use human-designed components. Our factories cannot produce replacements. We have contacted 17 different species for help. None of them understand the technology. The next message was from the counselor, stood in front of a window showing brown, dead fields. The crops are failing across 11 worlds. The soil treatments, the weather control systems, the pollinator drones, everything was built by human engineers. We never learned how they worked. We never thought we needed to. I closed the screen. She had seen enough. Humanity had spent 300 years quietly becoming essential, not through force or threats, but through kindness. A human doctor develops a cure and shares it freely. A human engineer fixes a broken system and teaches no one how she did it. A human company builds ships for other species, ships that only humans truly understand. It had never been a plan. It had simply been human nature. Humans saw problems and solved them. They saw suffering and eased it. They saw darkness and brought light. And in doing so, they had woven themselves into the fabric of galactic civilization so deeply that removing them was like removing bones from a living body. Professor No had chosen to stay behind. He was old now, past 90, and he had no family waiting for him in the new human territories. He preferred to spend his final years in the small apartment where he had lived for 50 years, surrounded by books in a dozen languages. High Arbiter came to see him on a cold afternoon. She looked tired, her silver robes wrinkled, her eyes red from sleepless nights. The confidence she had shown at the Exile hearing was gone. "Professor," she said, sitting across from him in his small living room, "I need to understand, why is this happening?" No poured tea for both of them. His hands shook with age, but his mind was still sharp. "What specifically confuses you, Arbiter?" "Everything is breaking. Systems that worked perfectly for centuries are suddenly failing. Species that thrived are now starving. It cannot be coincidence." "It is not coincidence," No agreed. "It is consequence." "Consequence of what? We simply asked humans to leave. We did not attack you, did not destroy your worlds." The old professor smiled sadly. "Arbiter, do you know why humans joined the Galactic Union in the first place?" Frowned, "For the same reason any species joins. Access to technology, trade, protection." "No," No shook his head. "We joined because we were lonely. Humans spent thousands of years alone on Earth, looking up at the stars and wondering if anyone else was out there. When we finally reached space and found you, found all of you, we were so happy. We wanted to share everything with our new family." "Family," repeated the word like it was foreign. "That is how humans think. When we meet someone new, we do not ask what we can take from them. We ask what we can give. For 300 years, we gave everything we had. Our medicine, our engineering, our art, our dreams. We asked for nothing in return except to be accepted." Was silent for a long moment. Outside, emergency vehicles rushed past, their sirens wailing. "And now," she finally asked, "now you have told us we are not wanted, so we are leaving, but we cannot leave behind the gifts we gave, Arbiter. Those gifts were part of us. When you rejected humanity, you rejected everything humanity created, everything we maintained, everything we kept working through love and care that we never asked to be repaid. But other species built things too. The galaxy functioned before humans arrived." "Did it?" No looked at her with eyes full of ancient sadness. Or did it merely survive? There is a difference between existing and thriving, Arbiter. Humans did not just add to the galaxy. We improved it. We fixed problems others ignored. We connected species that had never spoken. We made things better simply because making things better is what humans do. Felt tears forming in her eyes, something that had not happened since she was a child. "What have we done?" she whispered. "You exiled the gardeners," No said softly, "and now the garden is dying." That night sent a personal message to the human government, begging for reconciliation. She offered to reverse the exile order, to apologize publicly, to give humanity whatever it wanted. The reply came 3 days later. It was one sentence long. "Humanity thanks the High Arbiter for her message and wishes the Galactic Union well." Nothing more, no negotiation, no demands, no anger, just polite final silence. Read the message 100 times, looking for hidden meaning, for some sign of hope. She found none. Humanity had accepted its exile with grace, and now it was walking away with the same grace, leaving behind a galaxy that was only beginning to understand what it had lost. The fear that had started as a whisper was now a scream, echoing through every corner of civilization. And in the darkness beyond the galaxy's edge, 200 billion humans continued building their new home, asking nothing from anyone, needing nothing from anyone. They had learned their lesson well. 23 years after the exile order, Commander flew his small survey ship through the ruins of what had once been the busiest trade route in the galaxy. Dead ships floated everywhere. Some were cargo haulers, their holds still full of goods that would never reach their destination. Some were passenger liners, evacuated and abandoned when their engines failed. A few were warships, their weapons cold and useless, their crews long gone. "Recording everything," his co-pilot Lieutenant Hand said quietly. "The Council wanted observers during our departure. Now we observe their collapse." Said nothing. He was 45 years old and had spent half his life in the human fleet. He remembered the old days when these lanes were full of ships from 100 species, all trading, talking, living together. Now there was only silence and death. They passed a station that had once held 50,000 people. Its lights were dark. Its docking bays were empty. A single message played on repeat from its communication array: "Help us, please, anyone help us." No help was coming. Back in the new human territories, beyond the galaxy's edge, life was very different. Chief Engineer stood on a hill overlooking the city of New, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors that had never existed before humans arrived. 17 worlds. In 23 years, humanity had terraformed 17 worlds in a cluster that the Council had declared uninhabitable. They had done it using technologies they had never shared with the Union, technologies they had developed in secret over centuries, always knowing that this day might come. "The atmosphere processors on World 12 are online," her assistant reported. "Another 6 months and it will be ready for colonization." Nodded. "Good. What about the food production on World 7? "Exceeding projections by 40%. We will have surplus for the first time next year." Surplus, such a simple word, but it meant everything. It meant humanity was not just surviving, it was thriving. President addressed the human parliament that evening. She was a small woman with white hair and sharp eyes, elected 5 years ago on a platform of rebuilding and renewal. Behind her, the flag of the human stellar republic hung proudly, showing Earth and its new sister world circling a bright star. 23 years ago, the Galactic Council told us we were not wanted, she said, her voice calm but carrying to every corner of the chamber. They called us aggressive. They called us dangerous. They said our growth threatened the stability of their precious union. The Parliament was silent, listening. They were right about one thing. We are aggressive, but not in the way they feared. We are aggressive in our hope, aggressive in our creativity, aggressive in our refusal to give up, even when the universe tells us we should. She paused, looking at the faces of the representatives. Many of them had been born in exile, had never known the old galaxy. We offered the Union everything we had: our science, our art, our hearts. We asked only to be treated as equals. They gave us exile instead. And now they are learning what it means to lose the species that spent 3 centuries keeping them alive. A screen behind her lit up with images. Burning cities where civil war had erupted over scarce resources. Empty shipyards in hegemony space, where once-proud fleets rusted in silence. Mass graves on agricultural worlds, where millions had starved when the crops failed. "I do not show you these images to celebrate," said. "I show you so you understand what we walked away from, what we were forced to walk away from." The images changed, showing human worlds instead. Children playing in parks, scientists working in gleaming laboratories, farmers harvesting crops from rich, dark soil, ships being built in orbital factories, ships that would carry humanity to even more distant stars. This is what we have built. This is what we will continue to build. Not because we want to prove anything to the Council, not because we seek revenge, but because building is what humans do. It is who we are. In her private office after the speech, President received a message from High Arbiter. It was a desperate message, begging for help, admitting every mistake the Council had made. Defense Minister wanted to delete it without response. They showed us no mercy. Why should we show them any? Foreign Secretary Song disagreed. If we ignore their suffering, we become what they accused us of being. We become monsters. The debate lasted for hours. Some argued that helping the Union would only make humanity look weak. Others said that turning away from suffering was against everything humans believed in. Finally, President raised her hand for silence. "We will send a response," she said. "We will be polite as we have always been, but we will not go back. We will not save them. They must learn to save themselves just as they forced us to save ourselves." She dictated the message herself. "The Human Stellar Republic acknowledges the communication from High Arbiter. We wish the Galactic Union well in its current difficulties. We have no resources to spare at this time. Good luck." Foreign Secretary Song looked troubled. "Is this who we want to be? A species that watches others suffer and does nothing?" President looked at her with tired eyes. "We gave them 300 years of our best efforts. We gave them cures for diseases, solutions for problems, hope for the future. They took everything we offered and then told us we were unworthy of existence. No, Secretary Song, this is not who we want to be. This is who they made us." The message was sent. No reply ever came. In the old galaxy, the lights continued to go out. Species that had lived for millions of years found themselves facing extinction. Civilizations that had ruled thousands of worlds crumbled into dust. And through it all, the silence from human space was the loudest sound of all. 30 years to the day since the Exile Order, the last human observer ship crossed the border out of Union space. Captain Park Menu stood on the bridge, watching the stars of his ancestors fade behind him. His grandmother had been born on Earth, in the original solar system. His mother had been born on Vega Prime, one of the first colony worlds. He had been born in transit, on a refugee ship fleeing toward an unknown future. Now that future was behind him, and it was brighter than anyone had dared to hope. "Border crossing complete," his navigator announced. "We are officially in Human Stellar Republic space." A small cheer went up from the crew. 30 years of withdrawal, 30 years of watching, 30 years of waiting. It was finally over. On the archive vessel memory, historian compiled her final report. She was 60 years old and had spent her entire adult life documenting the exile and its aftermath. Her ship carried the most complete record of the event in existence. Millions of documents, videos, testimonies, and analyses. She sat in her small cabin, looking at a photograph on her desk. It showed her grandfather, a farmer on one of the lost colony worlds, standing in a field of golden wheat. He had died during the evacuation, his heart giving out from the stress of leaving everything he had built. "This report is for you, grandfather," she whispered, then began to write. The Galactic Council believed they were punishing humanity when they ordered our exile. They thought they were removing a threat, cutting out a cancer, protecting their perfect union from the chaos of human ambition. They were wrong. Humanity was never a threat to the Union. Humanity was the Union's heart. She wrote for hours, documenting everything. The collapse of the economy, the dissolution of the hegemony military, the extinction of 3 minor species who had depended entirely on human aid, the mass migrations, the famines, the wars that had broken out as desperate civilizations fought over resources. For 300 years, humanity quietly maintained the galaxy. We did not do this for power or profit. We did it because helping others is what humans do. We saw a doctor on a world, treating patients for free because they needed help. We saw an engineer on a station, fixing systems that no one else understood because if he did not, thousands would die. We saw teachers and artists and dreamers, sharing their gifts with anyone who asked. The Council called this cultural contamination. They saw our kindness as aggression, our creativity as a threat. They could not understand a species that gave without asking, that built without claiming, that loved without condition. So they cast us out, and in doing so they destroyed themselves. She paused, looking out the window at the stars of the new human territories. 100 worlds now, up from the original 17. A population of 300 billion, growing every year. Cities that made the old Earth capitals look like villages. Technologies that the Union had never imagined. History will ask whether humanity was right to abandon the Union to its fate. Some will say we should have helped, that our principles demanded compassion even for those who wronged us. Others will say we gave enough, that 3 centuries of unreturned kindness earned us the right to walk away. I do not know the answer. I know only that we did what we had to do to survive. The Council left us no choice. They wanted us gone, and so we went. We took everything we had given with us because those gifts were never truly given. They were on loan, waiting to be called back if we were ever told we were not welcome. Now the old galaxy is silent. The great civilizations that voted for our exile are dust and memory. The species that cheered our departure are gone or scattered. The council chamber where our fate was decided floats empty in space, its flags faded, its platforms dark. And humanity continues. We build, we create, we dream. We have found new friends among the species of distant galaxies, species that had never heard of the Union, that welcome us not for what we can give them but for who we are. This is the lesson of our exile. Kindness is not weakness. Generosity is not foolishness. But kindness and generosity must be given to those who deserve them. The galaxy that rejected us did not deserve our gifts. They proved this by their own actions. May future generations remember this. May they never make the mistake of giving too much to those who give nothing back. And may they never forget what happens when the gardeners are driven from the garden. She saved the document and closed her computer. Outside, a new star was rising over the horizon of the nearest planet. Its light was warm and golden, like the wheat fields of her grandfather's farm. 200 years later, a small ship stumbled into human space. It was a vessel, barely functional, crewed by the descendants of refugees from a civilization long collapsed. They had wandered for generations, searching for a home, finding only empty worlds and dead stations. Admiral received the distress call at her post on the border station. She was the great-great-granddaughter of Colonel, who had supervised the evacuation of Vega Prime. Her family had served in the human military for 8 generations. She looked at the sensor readings, 53 life signs all weak. Their ship was falling apart. Their power reserves were nearly empty. They had maybe 3 days before they died. "Admiral," her aide said quietly, "their ancestors voted for our exile." "I know. Should we contact command, get authorization?" Thought about it. She thought about history, about justice, about the old wounds that had never fully healed. She thought about her ancestor, watching Vega Prime die, knowing that they had helped make it happen. Then she thought about something else, something simpler, something more human. 53 people were dying. They had done nothing wrong. They had not voted for exile. They had not cheered when humanity was cast out. They were just people, lost and afraid in the dark. She opened a channel. "This is Admiral of the Human Stellar Republic," she said. "We are sending medical ships and supply transports. Hold on, we are coming." Her aide stared at her. "Admiral, 300 years ago, we gave everything to a galaxy that rejected us," said quietly. "We learned our lesson, but that lesson was not to stop giving. It was to choose more carefully who we give to." She looked at the sensor readings again, at the fatting life signs of 53 innocent people. "These people have done nothing to earn our hatred. They were not our enemies. They are just survivors like we were, and survivors help each other. That is what makes us human." The medical ships launched within the hour. By the next day, all 53 were safe aboard human stations, receiving care they had never expected from a species their ancestors had wronged. Word spread through the old galaxy. Humanity still lived. Humanity still helped. Humanity had not forgotten how to be kind. And slowly, carefully, the first threads of a new connection began to form. Not the old union with its rules and hierarchies and judgments. Something new. Something built on mutual respect, on chosen kindness, on the understanding that gifts given freely are worth more than treaties signed under pressure. History never ended. It only turned the page. And on that new page, humanity wrote a single word: hope.